I just realized that I didn't put socks on, so you can see my toes. I don't know if we should we blur those?
For free?
Look at those dogs! Hello, and welcome back to Lit By Moonlight, where it's not a phase to leave your entire family just because, like, why not? Why not do that?
You're just quirky like that.
We hope you had a very happy new year. We missed you. Some of us more than others. No, we're so excited to be back for season 2 of Lit By Moonlight.
Woohoo!
We did it, Joe.
We did it, Joe. Oh, that's my go. Listen, usually we're staring right at a computer and we have all the notes in front of us, so I'm under pressure. This week and for the next few weeks, and probably off air until the day we die, we're going to be talking about Our Flag Means Death and giving a episode by episode breakdown of season 1.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
And this is all in preparation for season 2, which will probably be coming out sometime this year. It's supposed to.
It will.
I just need some information. I just need to know, like, when. I got to plan ahead. You know, I'm an agenda girl. I'm a color-coded agenda girl. I need to, like, kind of be able to say, oh, this is when this is happening. And so far, I don't have that, so.
Yeah, I also don't believe it's actually happening.
Yeah, I kind of don't either. But I also don't really believe this show exists. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of like a, what's the opposite of a truther? A falser. When it comes to this show. Because you guys liked our first reaction episode so much from back in June, we thought we would try it again by giving you a little bit more of a breakdown. And we're going to start today with what, Caitlin?
Episode 1, the pilot.
The pilot. I think we should start off by talking a little bit about how we first found out about this show. I know we talked about this a little bit in our last episode, but it might be worth rehashing, I think, for anybody new paying attention.
I found out about it on Tumblr because like one person was like watching it and I was just like scrolling through and I was like, okay, I see a lot of people talking about this. Didn't know what it was about. Just knew it was about pirates. And then I was like, I'll put it on my watch list. I don't know what this is. And then I saw that one of the little guys in the GIFs, I'm a GIF person, I'm sorry, was Rhys Darby, and I watched Wrecked, which I love with my whole entire heart. And I was like, oh, he's in this. I'll give it a go. And then I watched it and my entire life was changed. So,
for who can say I've been changed for the better? Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I think you told me about it.
I did.
If we
immediately forced it upon
I think
you.
it'd be really funny if, like, this episode, I gave a completely different reason for how, like, a completely different justification for how I found out about it than the last episode. Because in the last episode, I certainly said that you told me about it, and that's why I ended up watching it. But what if this time around I was like, oh, I was just online one day.
I made this, actually.
I actually made the show.
Oh, wow.
So.
You're the Javid Dinkins.
I'm Javid Dinkins. Yeah. So I heard about it from you, and I think I was already thinking about watching it. Thank you. I was already thinking about watching it, but I think I needed a trusted source to seal the deal.
Yeah, that's
which
neat.
is where you came in. So I appreciate that, and I think that's kind of how we ended up here.
Yeah.
So many months later, still talking about this show and like praising it and obsessing over it.
It's been
and reading really
11 months.
dirty fan fiction about it. How long has it been since you last watched this show?
I think the last time I watched it was in November. So like very, very early in November, because another friend started watching it and I was watching it along with her. And then I forced myself not to watch it because I knew we were going to be doing this. And I was like, I want it to all be fresh. Yeah. And for some reason, like the depression and anxiety were worse in those 2 months without it. Because the second we popped it on today, I was like, aha, everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's
fine. There's still good things in the world.
Yeah.
I think the last time I watched this was August.
Yeah.
With you and then another one of our friends. This is, so as you can see, this is just what we do for a living, is we go and we tell other people to watch the show with us, and we do that. So,
you're welcome.
Yeah, I feel like that was the last time, and then I didn't really think, I kind of like forgot it all, so that I could, when I watched it again, I could kind of watch it with like a fresh perspective on everything, which I think was beneficial, but also meant that when some things happened this episode, I was like, oh yeah.
I almost started crying at the end of it.
I know, but we'll get to that. Yeah. Let's take it slow, sliding back into one of our favorite shows of this year. So, about this episode, for those of you who maybe haven't watched it in a while, or you're not watching it and you're just watching us for some reason, kinky, but okay. Like, basically, it's kind of like an introduction to the whole show, as most pilot episodes are.
It definitely sets the tone for the entire show.
It sure does. Like, you've got this guy who's like a pirate, a gentlemanly pirate, if you will. Steed Bonnet is his name, based on the actual Steed Bonnet, but not completely, because one was probably like horrific, and this one is just some guy.
He's just some guy.
And we kind of get like a sneak peek, a little slice of life in this first episode, into understanding exactly like what happens on this ship called the Revenge, where he is with his crew, and like what do they do, and what are their little like mishaps and tomfooleries that they partake in and day out, which was kind of what this was about. But there was also kind of this underlying heaviness, because you also start to learn in like little blinks, little flashes of scenes, like what could also be going on underneath when it comes to Steed, and how his character is a little more complicated, how his character is a little more complicated than I think the show initially lets on.
Yeah, I think that was kind of what like hooked me on the show, was because it wasn't just like, I mean, I was gonna be here for like silly pirates and stuff, but like I think like the second that it flashes back to Steed's like childhood, where you see that his father was a dick, I was just like, okay, so there's something more here. But more so than that was just like, I think like those moments were me going, okay, so this is gonna be a little bit more of serious undertones in the show. It's not just going to be all silly fun times. Boy, was I not prepared. But I think more so than even those flashbacks were the ones with Mary, because
his wife,
because you find out that he left her. And my favorite part was when it flashes back, and the first flashback scene, he's like separated from the rest of his family,
right?
So in your head you're like, oh, his family hates him or whatever. And it's like, they're the problem.
Right, right.
But then, like, at the very end, we see it again, and he's, like, right with them. So you're just like, what is the truth?
Yeah.
So he's kind of like an unreliable narrator in that sense.
Yeah.
Which I really liked. So that, at the end there, got me. I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing. I want to know more.
Right. I really appreciate shows like that they'll show you little blinks from the past, and you kind of get a hint of what might have happened, but you don't exactly know. This is something we recently encountered. We both just watched Fleabag together.
Oh, dear God.
Where it's like they do that. It's one of my favorite tools, I think, in like in filmmaking, and it is when you're kind of able to tell a little bit of the story, like a little increment, but not give it all away. Mm. And it's like that main character, they know what happened, but you don't. So it's kind of your job throughout the whole season to figure out what exactly is up with them. Yeah, I love that.
I'm just thinking about it now. It's so fresh for me. We're not talking about that right now, but go watch Fleabag. Bring tissues. I'm sorry.
As someone who's already seen the show and watching it with you, it was like all you could hear, if you were just the two of us sitting on the couch, you'd see her just like, oh, and then you're just going
violently sobbing.
Silent but violent sobbing. So like, what hooked you when it came to this very, very first episode, Caitlin?
Well, definitely, like I was saying, like the flashbacks, but the comedy of it all was so specific.
Yeah.
And like I feel like for my favorite sense of humor, like my sense of humor is like I look to the movie Airplane.
Yeah.
Which we just rewatched the other night. I watched that when I was younger, and I feel like that really like shaped what I find is funny.
Right.
And just the things I find funny, which is the stupid little shit.
Yeah.
That really isn't that funny at all, but yes, it is.
Yeah.
And also just like dry humor, but also like humor in the way that it makes you think.
Right.
or like in like structure. So like one of my favorite lines in this show is every pirate captain's pirates differently.
Yeah,
just like those words. I don't know, it's just like nice. Like just stuff like that. But I think what really got me was just like the performance of it all, because I feel like Rhys Darby in this show is just so captivating to watch.
Yeah.
And like every little movement he does or how he says things is just comedic in a way.
He's very animated.
Yeah, it was fun. Like the whole scene where they're looting the fisherman on the boat, just his struggling on the ladder,
trying to get back over.
Like, what is he doing? I know. So it's just like you can't not watch him. So I think that definitely helped for me. What about you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of a mix of two things. It's the humor first.
Yeah.
Because I love Airplane. I think that's a really good reference.
Yeah.
For me, it reminds me there's kind of like a Monty Pythonication of it all.
Yeah.
Like it very much looks like it just has like the same level of silliness, and I love silliness, like and not in just like a slapstick way, which is not my favorite genre of comedy, but more in like a ironic, like Shirley, you can't be serious. Well, I am, and don't call me Shirley type of way. Which is something like I immediately appreciate about this show. Like there's just something kind of ridiculous about it.
Yeah.
The second thing, and this is kind of a conglomerate of things, but I think it's really important to talk about and praise, is the detail.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll start with costumes, because I think we're talking about the pilot episode. This is kind of the time and place to really judge the aesthetics of the show. The costumes are so detailed. Like, so intricate. That's, like, the first thing I made a note of when we rewatched this, is there's just, like, this, like, really, really keen awareness of, like, who every person is. Because Steed, for example, has, like, this frilliness, this almost, like, coquette girl vibe about him. Like, with the frilly lace and the little black tie. I was like, ooh, girl. You know, and then, like, the English, like, have very, like, defined costuming. There's just something so fascinating about this. This is something we were talking about the other day, how, like, a lot of Netflix shows, for example, they can have incredible costuming and incredible attention to detail, but also just have no substance and be kind of shitty. What do you think?
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I liked how I was, like, paying attention to that, too, with all of the, like, the rest of the crew members, like, not just Steed, but, like, how you kind of get to know a little bit about the crew just through their costuming, specifically Black Pete, because I feel like he has this, like, for no reason, a horseshoe on it. I don't know what that does or why.
It's for funsies.
He doesn't seem like the one to be like, this is for good luck. But just like I gotta look tough. I'll put a horseshoe on my belt or something. Yeah. So, like, I kind of liked that detail of just, like, I feel like that also, like, shows more about him, where it's just, like, it might not make sense, but he thinks it's cool.
Yeah, he thinks it's cool. That's who he is.
He's so cringy in the best way possible.
Sorry, the other thing about Black Pete that's really funny is he's wearing these super muted rainbow pants.
Yeah.
And when he starts talking, when in the flag scene, there's a lens flare that's rainbow, which is so funny and, like, randomly gay.
It also happens when Steed, like, walks down the stairs for the first time. You see, like, a little blip of rainbow.
Yeah,
Like, oh, we should have known.
What's that mean?
Like, what does it mean? Like, who would have seen that coming? Oh, not I.
Not you.
Not me. But yeah, and also, like, even when, like, the crew gets all dressed up for the party, or not party, but the dinner with the English, like, how they all have Steed's clothes on, I feel like even, like, the ones that were chosen kind of fit them in a way.
Yeah, no, exactly.
How? Couldn't tell you, but it just feels right. So.
Well, I felt the same way about the flags. Like, each person made a flag that kind of, like, went with who they are. Like, Alu's was very much, like, he, like, thought about the functionality of the flag and, like, how it would go up, because he's, like, very functional, like, intelligent, like, thoughtful person. Yeah. And, like, Frenchie's was, like, had a cat in it because he's so conspiratorial and he thinks, like, cats are, like, you know, violent. Yeah. So I feel like what I love about the show is immediately you can tell that there's, like, a lot of attention played not just to detail, but like character detail and like characterization. Yeah. Which is like something I really appreciate, because sometimes I think it's really easy for you to just get into like that person, they're like the feminine one, so they're just like, that's their personality. Yeah. Or like, that girl, she's like the girly one, so she's gonna wear pink all the time, but not actually like dive into that more and kind of talk more about what that means. And I like that, because in a way they're all wearing like the same type of garb. They're all pirates. Yeah. But there's incremental little things that they do or say or that they're wearing that tell you more about how they differentiate from everybody else.
Yeah, and I feel like I almost thought they were going to go into like one of those tropes with Jim at the end, because they take off their disguise and everything. And the first thought is, oh, it's a woman pretending to be a man so they can fit in. And it's just like, obviously, that's not the complete truth, but like I thought they were going to play into that, and I'm glad they didn't go into those types of tropes where it's like, this is this person, this is that person, like you were saying.
Yeah, like that's the thing, right? Like it doesn't end up being the truth at all. Like, and we won't talk about that yet because spoilers. But like later in the season, that's something that becomes like a big thing, because you know, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Is like, oh, and honestly, even at the beginning of the episode, I was like, oh, so Jim's character is just mute, and it's gonna be like a whole bit. But like eventually, in like 3 seasons from now, they say something.
I remember thinking in that scene where Jim and Oluwande are like with Steed and in his cabin, and they're like all sitting with him. I remember like looking at Jim the first time I watched this. I was like, something's up with this person here. Right. They kept like putting their hat down, or just like was kind of in the background, like trying to like make themselves small or something. And I was like, what's going on there? But yeah, I had nothing else to say about that. I'm just thinking about the show.
And like, I mean, it goes beyond that too, because I also think what I love about the show is there's something I can't really put my finger on it. I said trying to put my finger on it. There's something beautiful about it. Like, so another thing that I love about this episode is I think this is where it really shows its teeth. Because I think some would argue that doesn't really happen till later when we meet a certain character. Right. But I think that it's when we meet the Revenge that we really kind of get a sense of what the show could be. It's kind of like a show and tell of, look at how much work we put into this. Like, this is what this is. I think it's I almost want to say episode 1 is probably the best representation of what this show is. Yeah. You know? Because, I mean, you get taken across the deck, you get to see the ship itself, you get to see all of the detail put into, like, creating the masts and the ropes. When you go underneath it and you see Steed's cabin, it's so incredibly detailed. And, like, there's just, I remember watching it this time and just, like, my pupils dilating, because there's just not one thing that's out of place. It's all beautiful. Yeah, the production design of this show is incredible, because I genuinely thought, like, oh, they must have filmed some of this on the water. No. They did it. It's all in the studio, which I think is really cool. And I feel like it's just, I don't know, to me, like, this episode is like all warm and fuzzy to me, because like watching it, I'm just like, oh, it's just a silly little show about like all these people just trying their best. Right. And I find that what I really liked is how Steed interacts with the crew, because he's just like, he seems like, first of all, such a dad to them in a way, where he's just like, all right, we got to work on our communication. Like, what do? We talk it through. And like, you can tell like this is something that happens a lot with them. Right. Because like, they've clearly talked about this before, because John was like, oh, yeah, we talk it through. Come on, guys. Like, this is what we do. But also just the fact that like, he's like, he knows that some of them have had a bit of trauma in their past, because he mentions it. Right. And how he's like, okay, how do we work these feelings out? We're going to do arts and crafts. It's like a kindergarten class. And and like, I like how he goes around to each one of them, and he's just like, oh, what are you doing today? That's nice. Yeah. What are you doing? And like trying to get to know more about them and doing that. Which I think, and we'll talk about this later on, but I feel like it really says how like he was definitely able to communicate better with his kids than he could with his wife. Right. And I had a lot of big revelations about that when we were watching this episode, but can't talk about that yet because we have a missing piece. So. And what is that missing piece?
I'll tell you in episode 3.
Oh, I guess we're waiting. Okay. I guess, well, I think it doesn't hurt to touch on that a little bit now, though. Like, I think, like, what we learned about his character now in tandem with everything you just said is, like, there's, like, kind of this childlike personality that he has. He's very soft. He's very frilly. he's very he's kind of like a kid at heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of love that because immediately you get these we're talking about the flashbacks earlier. When you see the flashbacks, you also see that like you've got this father who's trying to instill these like super hyper masculine ideals on him.
Yeah.
And like immediately paints him as like this spoiled like little like cleanly man who will never know what it means to like chop a goose's head off or a duck's head off, whatever winged bird that was in the beginning. And I don't know, I feel like there's just something about that really sticks with me, and I think will hopefully come back later in the season for some of you who watched at home, is like that sense that he's not just like fighting this desire to be something that he's not, he's also fighting like who he already is.
Yeah, I feel like in the scene with Chauncey when he's just like, you like to pick flowers and do all this, like, and you would cry, and he's like, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, he never like denies it.
Yeah.
He's just very much like, yeah, that's me, and I still like it. Like, I feel like he really like protects that inner child that he has in him, and like he's not going to like now that he's on this pirate ship and he is a little walked away from his life where he was supposed to like molded into something that he didn't want to be,
right? Like
he can embrace those things. And I liked seeing that like he didn't try and deny that when he was confronted with his childhood bully, where I feel like any other show would have been like, what? No, I didn't do that. Like,
right.
What are you talking about? But he's just like, yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I am who I am.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's in part some unapologeticness there, but I think there's also because there's this desire to be like this brooding pirate and to do things that he's not used to because he's spent all of his life like kind of pampered. Yeah. That there's like it does seem like there's a little bit of like a conflict there between like who he is and who he's always been and like who he could be, and I hope he kind of gets to that why not both place.
Porque no los dos.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to say that. So Caitlin, what was your favorite part of episode 1?
I really liked when he bonked Chauncey on the back of the head. Or no, not Chauncey, Nigel. Sorry, when he bonked Nigel on the back of his head, and when Lucius and Oluwande go into his cabin, like, because at first I didn't realize that like you can hear like the squelch of the sword going through his eyeball. Yeah. But I didn't realize that happened at first. So when they cut to like when he's like, oh, I need a little bit of help in here, and he's like, I used the stun move, and it cuts to that image of Badminton like just with the sword shoved through his eye, and Lucius goes, yeah, no, he looks pretty stunned. That was the funniest. I remember laughing so freaking hard at that the first time I watched it, and I was just like, this show's good. Like, this is funny. And just, like, the whole sequence of Oluwande telling him, like, you need to tell the crew you did this on purpose, and then cut to him going, like, I did this on purpose. And I'm like, yeah, you got it, bud. Let's go. I don't know. There's something about, like, I feel like I was already going to continue the show at this point, but there's just something about the comedy of that scene that really just like had me laughing so hard. I'm like, I need to see how this continues. Like how like he just killed this big guy in the British Navy. Like, what's he gonna do? Now he has 2 hostages. What's up? What about you? Yeah,
I don't know. That's a good one. Yeah. I think kind of similarly, I love that scene where it's Steed, Alu, and then Nigel like laying there with the sword through him, and then you see like Lucius off to the side in this chair sitting like looking out. And it wasn't like the scene itself, but it was just the image of it that I love, because it in this first episode in particular, every single scene, if you think hard enough about it, looks like a Renaissance painting. It does, which I think is kind of like a great nod to like Taika Waititi as a director, because I think he's one of those directors that does like a really good job of creating not just like a scene, but like
like a whole space.
Yeah, like when you put something, when you put your books on a shelf and you color code them. Yeah. Like that's what it reminded me of a lot. Yeah. You know, there's this classic picture of Texas Senator Ted Cruz with like all of the microphones around him and the light coming down. Yeah. At the Capitol building, and that's what it reminded me over and over again. Yeah. And then there are probably actual Renaissance paintings that better equate to like what I'm saying. But I just love that. Yeah. And there's going to be a couple scenes down the line in later episodes where I felt the same way.
Yeah.
And I think if I could say, like, if I wanted to sell the show to somebody, I would probably say this, and maybe they wouldn't believe me at first, but I think the filmmaking, I think that the actual act of directing and producing a show like this is a marvel.
Yeah.
Like, there's just, like, I throw up immediately on my keys. There's just such attention to, like, color and, like, posing and, like, choosing the right angles that I really deeply admire.
Yeah, even the lighting, like, I really liked the lighting towards the end, like,
attention to weather. Yeah,
after everything is done and they've got the 2 hostages and the crew are, you know, tormenting them, but then Lucius and Elwande are just, like, talking together, being like, he's not the greatest captain, but it'd be better than anybody else at this point.
Yes.
And just like the gold against all of their little fancy outfits that they're still wearing, and then also just like that tracking shot of going up to Steed as Moondog plays in the background is just so pretty, and it's just like so nice to look at.
Yeah.
So, which I think helps like drive a show. If it's like you can't stop looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna stop watching it. So.
Yeah, like the contrast is probably belonged into a thought earlier in the episode, but the contrast of like Steed's like light blue outfit against everything else, all the browns and reds and golds in the episode, just really like eats me. But yeah, like the gold at the end. If you actually look up like set videos and you see how those shots were filmed and like what they used to do that, I feel like you gasp because it's so unbelievable. There's like a surrealness about the setting, right?
Yeah.
That I feel like it has to be so hard to capture. It reminds me a little bit of like the Dread Pirate Roberts scenes in The Princess Bride.
Oh yeah.
Like there's
yeah.
all of this color, and it almost looks like a play set. It almost looks like it was done inside of like a large theater or like a large sound studio, but at the same time, you believe it, you know, so much so that it made some of the crew and cast seasick.
Which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah.
So, any standout characters just from the first episode that you want to give flowers to?
So, I love Frenchie so much. I think he's kind of he's the first character that you see in the show.
Right.
His little song. And I like that it started off with a song too, because I was just like immediately like, ooh, this is fun.
Right.
But I feel like he almost like sets the tone for like how like silly the show can be, like in such a fun way, and like how funny it is, just with like all of his like little quips and everything. So I really liked him. I love how he's terrified of cats for no reason.
Yeah.
That's how that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I just think he's a fun character to watch because he always I feel like he just always has like some banger lines in the background. Like even just like the simple ones that like I feel like say a lot about his character. Like when he's just like, oh, can you pass this to me pretty please? And he goes, cheers, me dears. And I'm like,
cheers, my dears.
You're so cute. Like what's going on?
Obsessed with him.
But also on this watch, I paid a lot of attention to Wee John.
Yeah.
Which, like, he's so fun. What I love about him is that, you know, obviously, like, at first glance, like, he's this big, tough guy or whatever. But really, when it comes down to it, like, he's talking about how he's like, yeah, we should kill Captain, bless you. We should kill Captain and, like, totally mutiny and, like, do all this stuff. Like, he sucks at what he's doing.
Right.
And he even, like, says, like, this is like a disgrace and everything.
Right.
But at the same time, he's always the one who's like, yeah, but like he reads the stories, like he does the voices and everything. He keeps like I think a couple different times he talked about story time or about like what Steed would do that someone else wouldn't.
Right.
And he's the one who ends up crying at the end for like over the wooden boy.
Right.
And so I just thought like I loved that that softness that's to his character, and it's not played for laughs at all. Like that's another thing that I like about the show is like anything that could easily be played for laughs just to, like make fun of someone never is.
Yeah.
Which I love. Also, he was playing the harpsichord in the scene when they're all getting dressed, and that's the first time that I noticed this.
I know.
And I watched this show an ungodly amount of times. So I was like, wait, he's playing the music right now.
I know.
So I really enjoy him. So I think I'm gonna like pay more attention to his character.
Yeah,
this time around for sure.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
that's an excellent idea.
How about you?
For me, I think this episode I actually paid. I think in previous watches I paid a lot more attention to the crew. Mm-hmm. This episode I paid a lot of attention to Steed.
Yeah,
and I think it was just in part because like whoever did his big summer blowout for this episode knew what they were doing. Like he looked great, but also because I think like he really is like a super animated actor. Reese Darby is. To the point where I was like just watching his facial reactions to things. Mm-hmm. There are some actors like they just kind of know like what to do, how to play something off in like the perfect way, and also a way that you wouldn't even think of, or that like maybe somebody who was like doing an acting challenge on TikTok wouldn't think to do. So the bar's low. But I really enjoyed that. I really did.
I feel like that has to come with like most of his roles up until now have just been like the comedic relief.
Shitty. No, just kidding.
No, but like I feel like every role that I've seen him in, like no matter how far down the lineup that you are, the call sheet, he still steals the scene. Mm-hmm. And like the first thing I've ever seen him in was he was in an episode of X-Files, the reboot one. Right. And he was the monster of the week in that episode. Oh, yeah. But he was so iconic, and just his delivery. There's like one scene where in that episode, like he's in a drive-thru, and his character is like this alien thing, and he's in a drive-thru, but he's not in a car. He's just standing there, and he's asking like, he's like, okay, I'll have this and I'll have that, and then the person on the drive-through thing's like, sir, you have to be in a car in order to go through the drive-through, and he just looks at it and goes, why? And just like it's one word, I remember that. But the delivery of it was so funny, and I just I think about that so much, and I just feel like when you're given those roles where it's like, okay, you're only here for 2 minutes,
right? Sell it,
but you have to be funny. Like I feel like that like helps so much in like just like selling the comedy of it all, and just like making those little choices that make you interesting to watch, right? And lead the viewer to watch you instead of maybe someone else next to you. Yeah. So I feel like he does a really good job in like using everything that he knows of comedy into this role, even in the moments that aren't necessarily comedic. Yeah. It's really cool.
I feel like he really puts on a show. I remember watching Wrecked, another recommendation from you, and like he just plays like some weird guy in the first couple episodes, but then he ends up going on a journey. It reminds me a lot of the White Lotus. It's Armand, it's Murray Bartlett plays him, and he just kind of starts as like some guy who like runs the hotel, and slowly like devolves into like full on insanity. Like I won't give anything away, but it was like a very similar journey. Yeah. And it's funny to me because it's always just some random guy from the South who does some weird shit and steals the show. Yeah. But yeah, I thought he was incredible in this episode, and I'm really looking forward to the journey that he goes on in season 2 of Our Flag Means Death. Yeah. So, Caitlin.
That's me.
How did the end of this episode treat you?
I almost cried.
Yeah.
I've watched this too many times to count. I lost count. I stopped counting at one point. I really wish that like streaming services did like Spotify Wraps. Yeah. like your HBO Max Wrapped. And it's just like,
there's something wrong with you.
You're mentally ill. Like, get some help. This is not therapy. Yes, it is. But I've watched this so many times, but when High on a Rocky Ledge started playing, I was like, oh no. Like, I didn't forget, but I forgot momentarily until like once the piano started playing, I was like, oh, okay. Wow. We're really in it. And just like, I really liked the ending of this because, like I said before, the change in flashback of like him being right next to his family and they all look like they're having a good time. You're just like, wait, what? Yeah. Like, what? Why did you leave then? Right. And then just him, like he's literally crying, and there's this beautiful sunset and this gorgeous. And he's just like, no, my family's here now at sea. And as like, and you just see him like, just really like, I loved seeing that moment of him just being like a like weakness, like apart from everybody, like, oh, don't show anybody your real feelings.
Right.
And like, keeping all like the actual like sadness and grief like locked away.
Yeah.
The way he is, you see him with his crew and like he's again such a dad to them, and I believe it was like Taika's idea to be like, oh, maybe he reads stories to the crew because he misses his kids, which I think is just such a cool detail to have.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah, and you could just see how much like he cares for them, and like I just really think it says like a lot about like how he might be able to like the way he communicates with his crew and cares about them, but like doesn't do any of that like introspection on himself.
Oh yeah. We love
really cool.
a completely unintrospective king.
Yeah. What was yours?
I mean, retweet. I think that like the same thing. Like I forgot that High in the Rocky Mountain Ledge plays at the very end, and it's like an incredible song. Most certainly, like at least in the top like 10 on my Spotify Wrapped this year, I think.
Yeah.
Because I mean, also, and we can talk about this more later, but like the use of music in this show, like I think this is something I've noticed a lot with newer shows too, is like just knowing when to play what.
Yeah.
Like, don't look at me like that. You're like, where are you going with this?
I was like thinking,
music.
What's that?
I don't know. Like, I feel like there's, in time, in space, there are a couple favorite, like, experiences for me with music in the greater, like, film and television world, okay? It's, I think, top 5. Well, no, I'll give you a top 3. Okay. Because then you're just going to listen to me talk for the next, like, hour. But, like, it's definitely, like, probably when Harry realizes he actually is in love with Sally.
Yeah.
And on New Year's Eve and When Harry Met Sally. That's the movie, if you didn't guess from the two people. Yeah, look it up. And
When Jonathan Met Shirley.
It's actually about them, Jonathan and Shirley.
That's who back.
But when he realizes that and Frank Sinatra comes in with It Had to Be You,
yeah,
it always gets me.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And then maybe like sorry, now it makes me sick, physically ill. Sick. And then maybe like What We Do in the Shadows, when they play vampires, no vampires remain in Romania. It always gets me. But then like this is probably up there in the top like 3 is just the use of that song. No, it has to be, never mind, later that'll come up.
Yeah.
I remembered another song that plays later in the season, and I was like, wait, never mind.
Top 3, you sure?
It's definitely top 4 because there's just something about like the piano and the sunlight and the sunset related to the sunlight and like his like Reese's acting during that moment that really like hurts, like because they could have played anything. They could have played a song from like one of the background music.
Well, I read this interview with the music supervisor whose name I'm completely blanking
It's like
on.
Emily.
I'm sorry. It's something.
Emily.
I'll look it up later.
It's not Emily.
I don't think it's Emily. But where she was saying how she tried to get a lot of music that like isn't played before. Like there's a song that plays on later in the season.
Yeah.
Where she was like, I fought so hard against that song because it's used in so many different things. But it was funny because I'm like, oh, I've never heard this song before. But no, I'm not talking about what you think I'm talking about. It's episode 9-1. But where she like fought hard against that one because she wanted to make sure that it was something that like you know hear all the time, and like because sometimes it's just like it's almost like a gimmick. I feel like if you play like really popular songs, like okay, of course you're gonna use that.
Yeah, it's like.
But so I really liked that she used songs that like contextually made sense.
Yeah, but they weren't so well.
But like they weren't so well known that it took you out of it.
Right.
It just added to the story that they were saying.
In Princess Diana's Seasons of the Crown, I'll never forget they use The Edge of 17.
Really?
They do when she's younger, And that always sticks with me. Like, that's one of those things. It's like not one that they use often, but it's so iconic that it sticks. And then all of a sudden, like 2 months later, it's a TikTok sound.
Yeah.
And I really felt that way about some of the songs they used later in the season. Like, in a way, it's almost like it's not that those songs were like those songs were popular before. They just weren't used much in. Yeah. But it's this show that made them more popular, which I enjoyed. Yeah. So very much agreed. Like. So yeah, I guess to summarize, I went on a little bit of a spiel there, just because I love so much like the use of music and filmmaking, but I really really like that scene. I thought it tied everything together in a way that made me realize that like once and for all that this isn't just going to be like a silly little show. It's going to be a little silly show that hurts me. So you know,
I think what really wrapped it all up for me was all of the flags being flown at the end.
Yes,
where that like. I just feel like it showed that there's such like a family on that ship.
Yeah.
Like, it's like I saw someone somewhere and I can't remember who said it. Sorry. But
it's okay.
It was like thank you. It was like putting like all your children's artwork up on the fridge.
Yeah.
And that's like what Steed did with the crew.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, it's so sweet, which made me like the first time watching and every other time since be like, oh, he loves them. Oh, yeah, he appreciates them. How sweet. Yeah. And then it ends, and you're like, this is nice. But then, like, you watch it, like, more than once, and you're like, this is emotionally devastating for me.
Yeah. That was, I think, probably for me, the moment that I knew this show was going to be, like, a little more than just a pirate company. It's a pirate company. It's a multi-level marketing scheme.
They got me.
Damn it. I get a DM. It's like, hey girl, love your profile. From David Jenkins himself.
But that's what I've been doing to all of my friends since I watched it. Like, hey girl, I know we haven't talked in forever, but like, may I introduce you to this show? It's just like what I did.
The ratings are going to be like, you know how like the ratings for Lululemon leggings, Lululemon leggings, sorry, wrong legging company, are always like, they break immediately. It's going to be like, this show broke me immediately.
Yeah.
Bad.
You want some?
Yeah, so a lot to look forward to this season. I feel like we've really got ourselves into some deep shit when we decided to revisit this, is what I'm realizing.
100%, yeah. I'm ready to be absolutely emotionally devastated again.
My therapist's name is Dana, and she's going to hear about this one.
Real quick, though, before I forget, speaking of, like, things that are, like, coming, like, later this season, as far as, like, themes in this show, I noticed this time around, I never really paid attention to it, but Badminton says to Steed, or like his crew or whatever, like, oh, like how many pirate crews can you obliterate before it just becomes a chore? And you can tell that like he's getting bored with it.
Yeah.
And how he doesn't want to go back to his ship yet. Yeah. Because like he's just like, it's a smelly old ship. I don't want to go back there. I know what to expect. Where like all of this was like so new to him. Yeah. As Steed. I liked that idea of piracy becoming really boring to those who have been in it for a while was introduced in this episode, and I never noticed that beforehand.
Yeah, I also like that it's very obvious that like Nigel's projecting. Like he talks about how boring like being a pirate is, and he kind of says it nonchalantly, like, oh, whatever, I'm too good for this. But there also is this air of like, well, here's a guy that's doing something completely different.
I don't want you to step on my knee. Come here. This is Manny, everybody.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I think that's kind of funny, right? Yeah. That, like there's this guy, like they're clearly making fun of him, like the English, like Steed's clearly being made fun of by Nigel, but there's also this sense of like Nigel's life is so boring and dumb. It's almost like, and like also Steed is so different, and it's so easy for people when they don't understand something to other them.
Yeah, and I also feel like it just shows how much of a like, I guess so, like mask this kind of is for Badminton, because like he's just like, yeah, I'm this really cool like pirate captain or English, but like English Navy person, but I'm still bored. Yeah, like, on the inside, but he's not gonna tell you that because he wants you to think that he's cool.
Yeah.
So I think he's like kind of a cool little foil, I guess.
Right. For what's coming.
For what's to come.
What's coming? Tune in to find out.
Everyone's like, we already know.
So, it makes sense for us to close this episode down now. I like how I did that. Like we were ending like a Pilates session.
I wasn't ready. My hair got caught in my earring.
Let's keep going. But I think it makes sense for us to close the episode. Mostly so we can go watch the next one.
Yep.
But also because we have a tier list that I want to get to. Let's talk about our tiers. What are our tiers?
The first at the tippy top is I ate all of my house's drywall and the accompanying nails.
Yes, that means it was really, really good. Like
So
a great episode.
Mm-hmm. The next one down is made me mentally ill, affectionate.
Yeah.
Then the third tier is neutral, like my pH level.
Yeah, it's a mid.
The fourth level is made me mentally ill, foreboding.
Yeah. You never know what's gonna happen.
And then the last tier is Riverdale core.
Yeah. And that just means it was like so shitty. It was like so shitty that it was camp.
Yeah.
Or that it was like so camp that it was like shitty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Riverdale core.
Yeah.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. Yeah. It's all about having one guy from New Zealand that kind of goes ape shit.
I forgot he's from New Zealand too.
Archie. Okay, so Caitlin, where does this episode belong on the tier list, do you think?
I think this episode, I want to put it in made me mentally ill, affectionate because of like just, you know, the consequences of starting this show. But I almost feel like it belongs in neutral, like my pH balance.
Okay.
Or levels, because it doesn't like make me go batshit insane. It just makes me go, oh, I like this show.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say it's neutral.
Okay. So on neutral, it's on neutrals to Caitlin list.
On neutral to Caitlin's list.
It's Riverdale core. So on your tier list, you're gonna put it in neutral,
yeah.
like your pH.
Like my pH.
That's good news.
How are you?
I'm gonna surprise everyone. I'm gonna say, to me, this episode made me eat all of my house's drywall.
Yeah.
And the accompanying nails.
Right.
And I'll say why. You know, I think pilot episodes, they don't get a lot of credit most of the time because it's like a one and done, you kind of forget it. Like, do you remember the pilot episode of iCarly? I don't.
No.
But this one, I think what makes this one memorable and make me appreciate it more than I have on past watches is like the attention to detail, the colors, like the clear amount of love and affection that was poured into making it look the way it did.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that, like more than I think I ever have. Does this mean that I'm gonna all of a sudden appreciate every episode and put every episode in that tier category? I really hope not. I mean, I'd love to, but that just wouldn't be fair. I think it's just that I love that this episode shows me what this show really is and who the people that made it really are. So that's why I'm gonna stick it.
I like it.
Right.
I approve.
So thank you for watching or listening to this episode of Lit By Moonlight.
Yay! Now everyone can see how bad my posture is. The entire time I'm like, fuck.
Finally!
I'm being perceived!
You can see my curved spine. If you watch along here on YouTube, then we encourage you to hit the subscribe button. I'm not going to point to where it is because I don't know. Or give us a like and then comment, but hopefully say something nice. If you say something mean, it'll hurt my feelings.
It's just me in the comments being like, Evelyn kind of sucks.
She's rude. I don't like her. Your earrings are ugly.
No, but please do comment because we love engaging with people. And I also just like to know that we're doing a good job.
Now, if you are following along by listening to our podcast on Spotify or your favorite streaming service for podcasts, then please be sure to like us and rate us and reach out to us on social media and say nice things to us about our hair. Just our hair, though.
Just our hair, though. Amberlynn's eyebrows were really nice.
Thanks, I know. So thank you for listening.
Yay!
We will see you next week when we review episode 2 of our Flagging Stuff, A Damned Man. Bum, bum, bum. I'll show you a damned man.
Bye!
No, not bye. I'll show you a damned man.
Oh, yeah! Is the damned man in the room with us right now? He ran away.